So today we're going to talk about how the Constitution has lasted more than 200 years and is still relevant and is still able to be the primary document that governs our country. Okay? Our desired result is to examine the amendment process and the effect that it has on the government. Okay, and these are the standards that we're working towards: analyzing sources, purposes, functions of law, and how the rule of law protects individual rights and promotes the common good, and evaluating the application of the principles in contemporary civic life. So the Constitution was written more than 200 years ago, and the writers of the Constitution realized that the world is going to change, and Americans are probably going to need to change the Constitution. So what they did when they wrote this document is they included a process to change the Constitution. Okay? They made the Constitution adaptable, which means it is changeable, okay? Because things aren't always going to stay the same. So, and they knew that. So they gave us a way to change it and continue to make it relevant. It is not easy to change the Constitution, okay? The process was made to be difficult, and it was done on purpose because the writers of the Constitution wanted to make sure that it couldn't be quickly changed because of political ideals that change, or temporary changes in public opinion. People change their minds all the time, right? They didn't want the government to be changed on a whim. Okay, so they made it difficult to amend the Constitution. Now, there are two ways that the Constitution can be changed. Okay, it can be changed officially by an amendment, which is the process that we're going to talk about today. But it can also unofficially be changed by government laws. Okay, when Congress passes acts and the president signs off on them, that is a change to the government. That is a change to the Constitution. Okay, it's just not one that is written directly into the document. So now we want to talk about the amendment process, and this is the official way that the Constitution could get changed, okay? And that word amendment, it just means a written change made to the Constitution. And the process is written out, it's spelled out for us in Article 5 of the Constitution, okay? Amendments have to be approved by 3/4 of the states, okay? That's 75%. So that makes it kind of difficult, and it takes a long time. If you want to create an amendment to the Constitution, it's a long shot for it to ever be approved. Okay, this document has existed for about 240 years. There have only been 27 official amendments, and remember, the first 10 were all passed at the same time. There have been more than 11,000 amendments proposed. But only 27 of them have officially been added. So that shows you how difficult the process is to amend the Constitution. So an amendment can be proposed in two ways, okay? The first way, and this is the way that happens most often, is that Congress can propose an amendment by getting 2/3 of the members of both houses to agree. So you get 2/3 of the senators and 2/3 of the representatives to agree to propose this amendment, okay? The other way that you can propose an amendment is that the legislatures in 2/3 of the states, okay, so that now we're at the state government level, which is 34 out of the 50 legislatures, can ask Congress to call a national convention to propose an amendment. And if they did that, there would be a national convention. Delegates from all the states would come and vote on whether or not they should propose this amendment. Okay, once an amendment gets proposed, once it gets cleared to be voted on, it has to be ratified. And remember, that word ratified just means to approve. Okay. Now, there are also two ways that an amendment can be ratified. Okay. It can be sent to the state legislatures, and the state legislatures must approve it. Okay. This is the way that almost all of the amendments have been approved. It's been sent to the state legislatures, and that's where it needs to get 75% of the states to agree. Okay. It can also be sent to state conventions for consideration. This has only happened one time out of the 27 amendments that have been approved. Normally, it gets sent to the state legislatures, and they are the ones who approve it. Okay, so this is a little graph, a graphic that kind of explains what we just talked about. It can be proposed in two ways. And it can be ratified in two different ways. And if it gets proposed in one way, it can be ratified in either one of the other ways. That does have to be spelled out when the proposal is made. If an amendment is proposed, it will say what the ratification process is going to be. And like we talked about, 26 times it's been passed through state legislatures. Only one time has it gone through specially called state conventions. So once the amendment is ratified, once that 75% of the states approve it, it then becomes a written part of the Constitution. Okay, that means it covers every person in every state. Now, there is also a process. So say we pass an amendment and then nobody likes it. Then it's a terrible idea, or at least the majority of people think that it's a terrible idea. That amendment can be repealed or canceled. Okay, that's what repeal means. It basically just means to cancel. This has happened one time in our history. The 18th Amendment was passed, which banned the production and sale of alcohol in 1920. By 1933, the majority of Americans thought that this was a really bad amendment. So they voted then to repeal that amendment. So the 21st Amendment basically cancels out the 18th Amendment. That's the only time in our history that that has ever happened. Okay. So the other reason that the Constitution continues to be relevant and to be able to be our guiding principles for government is that the Constitution is very vague. It doesn't get too specific all the time, and it's just a broad outline. Okay, a lot of systems and procedures that are in place have happened and just become the normal way of doing things. They're not necessarily written into the Constitution, but they are the normal way of doing things. When Congress passes laws, it interprets whether or not it thinks that the Constitution allows them to pass that law. If they do and the president agrees, then it becomes a law. But you get that third check, and it is ultimately the Supreme Court who has the authority to say whether or not a law is allowed under the Constitution. Okay, so they have that final interpretation of what the Constitution actually means, which is part of the reason that the Supreme Court justices are given a life term. Okay, they as long as they don't do anything illegal, they can't be fired. So they're not making decisions in fear of their jobs. Okay, so they are able to interpret the Constitution in an impartial way. So these are the ways that the Constitution can be changed and the reasons that the Constitution continues to endure today. Okay, it's still our guiding light, really, in the way that our government is run. Have a good day, everyone.